It's time to spread a brand new agenda on this channel. We're going to talk about a thing that we've never talked about on here, but if you see me on Twitter, if you see me talk about it pretty often, we're going to talk about Zatch Bell, folks. And prepare to see Zatch Bell actually quite a bit on this channel, because I'm really thinking about diving into the Zatch Bell content creation game, because it's something that I'm really interested in. The manga is back, and we're going to be talking about that in this video. And there's just a lot to talk about that I really feel like I could talk about, like, passionately, because I really love that manga. So we're going to be talking about Zatch Bell a little bit on the channel, and today we're going to start off by, of course, talking about the sequel manga to Zatch Bell. And a lot of people don't know about this. Like, this is a thing that I know a lot of people aren't aware of, but there is a sequel manga to Zatch Bell, I think affectionately called Zatch Bell 2 by the fandom, and there is one chapter out right now. It's being self-published by the mangaka. One chapter out right now, and I believe it's monthly, right? Did I say that already? I'm pretty much just repeating myself, but we're going to talk about it. You can see my excitement, and we're going to get into it because I read the chapter, and I was like, this is a little different. You know, I don't really like where this is going. What is this about? But then the end of the chapter grabbed me right back. Brought me right back to my insane level of hype for this series. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what has me hype. Let's talk about if there's any returning characters or anything like that. And what is Zatch Bell, right? What is Zatch Bell? Starting with this sequel video. So we started this chapter off with new characters to the Zatch Bell universe, I believe, even though there are some returning characters in this chapter. We started this chapter off with two characters, Zelly and Ziggy, who are running through the Momoto world. They have a little dog and they have a baby in tow, and the baby has kind of like some sort of deformity on half of the face. But it's also interesting to note that one of the characters, Ziggy, which is like the older, taller one with black hair that you'll see if you read the chapter, also has kind of like a face mask kind of situation going on with half of their face. So I wonder if there's any correlation there. But we have this character, Zelly, who's carrying this baby. She's clearly a Momoto, right, I would assume. And she's being chased down by this taller, kind of like grown, very tall, kind of scary Ryuk / Hunter x Hunter villain looking demon. And now there is a little bit of confusion whether or not this thing is a demon, because dialogue later in the chapter kind of seems to suggest that it's not a demon, but I believe that it's something like a dark demon, right? Like it's like a demon that's just born with darker properties, which is something that we're going to go into in our next video about Zatch Bell, where I talk about this interview from the mangaka actually that explains a lot of the stuff that actually happens in this chapter, and it's from years ago, you know what I mean? Like it's not something recent. This sequel manga kind of came out of nowhere for me, but it seems like stuff in that interview really pieces together with a lot of the stuff that happens in this chapter. So after we talk about the chapter, I'd love to talk about the stuff that happened in that interview and how it links up. But yes, we have this big kind of demon-like figure throwing a rock at Zelly and knocking her down, and the character is like carrying a suitcase. Some of their guts are like visible through their suit. They look kind of cool, honestly. But in true Zatch Bell fashion, what seems like a very kind of childish art style and stuff like that, there's a lot of like short kind of chibi-esque characters, gives way to like some really dark stuff, right? So this big demon throws the rock at our character, breaks her arms, breaks her legs, right? And then we all have to run in pain, right, from a giant demon that's hunting them down, only for that demon with an already kind of grotesque design to transform into a much bigger, much scarier kind of demon, right? Like it looks really grotesque. It's muscly. There's like 6 arms. Every arm has like a different weapon in it, right? Except for the 2 main arms. The brain is exposed. Blood is dripping. Like it's this really creepy design that, you know, you tend to get that in this kind of series by this author, right? Where there's these cute kind of like, you know, small designs and everything looks like it's gonna be fine, and you're like, oh, what is this, Happy Tree Friends? And then you get something like grotesque and scary and crazy that kind of like is interesting when placed together, right? So the older character Ziggy that's defending this baby along with the new character Zelly tells Zelly to take the baby, who's named Olmo, right? Here, take this weird half-faced baby real quick, and I'm gonna defend us against this monster that's attacking us. And usually you would expect in the world of Zatch Bell for spells to kind of just come out of the Momoto, right? Like we know that there are spell books and whatnot, and that's associated with the Momoto. Like we know there are spell books and stuff, and that's associated with some of their attacks sometimes. But here we actually see something different and wholly brand new in the lore of Zatch Bell, right? At least as far as I'm aware. You can remind me in the comment section below if we've seen this before in the first series, but I think this is new. We see the character Ziggy take out like a flask that they have on their side, right? Like a kind of a bottle with a lid on it, and inside of that bottle is a crystal, right? And they take it, they pop it open, and they activate the crystal, and that allows them to do like a big kind of like crystal shooting attack where they shoot. It's kind of like Emerald Splash effectively, right? Like they're pretty much doing Emerald Splash. But that seems like that's what Ziggy's magic is, right? But it seems kind of weird that it's coming in like this limited bottle form, right? Like they're holding their spells in a bottle, it kind of seems like, and we see that after they use the attack for the first time, the spell inside the bottle breaks, meaning that this spell was like a one use, or like, you know, kind of something in that vein, whereas usually we know that spells for demons or Mamoto are like multi-use. You can use them multiple times, you can use them, you know, to a certain extent whenever you want, right? When you're in the realm of the Mamotos, or when you're in the demon world. So this is definitely like a new thing, and in response to that, we actually see the demon hunting them down opens a briefcase that it's carrying the whole time, right? Instead of like attacking back with all sorts of weapons to block all these jewels and the emerald splash that's coming its way, it opens a briefcase and we see 4 vials, 4 of those kind of like spell containment jars that have 4 different spells in them, right? We see a kind of leaf grassy spell, we see a fire spell, we see a lightning symbol, and we see an ice symbol. Kind of the 4 different elements. I mean, you're kind of substituting ice for water there, but one of the 4 different elements each is inside of this briefcase. And oddly, when this briefcase is open and one of the spells is unleashed, it's actually a lightning spell, and it actually ends up being Rashirudo, which if you know anything about Zatch Bell, you know that is one of Zatch's first spells that he unlocks in the original series. I believe it's like the second spell that he unlocks, right? Which puts up a giant gate of electricity, right? With 2 kind of gate sides and like an electric symbol in the middle, and not only does it block attacks, but it sends the attacks back at the caster, right? At, I think, an enhanced strength. I don't know if it's like double, but it's something like that, where it's like you send it back and it's stronger when you send it back. And we even have the character of Zelly mentioning that, oh no, that's the king spell. And that kind of puts things into perspective, because, you know, at the end of the original Zatch Bell series, obviously it's kind of like a battle royale about different demons trying to become the demon king by using humans who can, you know, help them cast spells and fulfill this battle royale until there's only one left. At the end of that series, we do have Zatch becoming the Mamoto king, right? And we don't know exactly how much time has passed between then and the beginning of this series, but something later on in the chapter kind of gives us a little bit of a hint. But even with that said, there's no true way to know how much time has gone by in the demon world versus the amount of time that's gone by in the human world, right? Like, I don't know if they're exactly one-to-one with the way that time flows through both of them. So, for some kind of weird reason, this demon that's hunting them down has access to Zatch's spells, right? And his spell, like, jar isn't one use. So it seems like maybe there are kind of grades or levels to the different kind of spells, where like maybe some spells are weaker and they can only be used one time, whereas some spells are obviously, like, you know, the king spells are going to last a little longer and have more durability, or maybe they just don't break at all, right? That, I mean, I would imagine that's pretty overpowered. But from there, after the Rashirudo spell was used, we have the villain talking about how, you know, Ziggy's spell failed, your leg is broken, you can't really get away now. This is the end of our little demon hunt. Now I'm going to send you to the same place as your friends. And we'll find out about what friends specifically he's talking about a little later, because we do see some familiar characters that didn't make it, sadly. But I think this is the turning point of the chapter to a certain extent. Ziggy gets up, right? Leg broken, everything seems like it's gonna go bad in a second, right? There's not really any hope here. And Ziggy says, I'm gonna take a big risk here. Ziggy stands up despite the broken leg and holds out a piece of paper and says, if it's to save these children, then I'll put my life on the line for this last chance. And then when she hands the paper to Zelly, she says, listen carefully, Zelly, look for the man on this paper. And Zelly's confused. She's like, who is this? Like, who is this person that I'm supposed to look for that's gonna give us hope in this despair? And of course, and this is where it really got me hooked back in, of course, Ziggy says that they're talking about a human named Kiyomaru, and that is the king's partner, which we know in the original series is our main character, Kiyo. She even goes as far as to say the one who can create hope out of despair is the king's partner. And with that message and that note passed on, Ziggy looks forward and prepares themselves for an attack from this big, disgusting demon, and takes it and gets absolutely obliterated, like thrown into pieces all over the ground. It is not pretty, but is not unconscious, right? This character Ziggy is not made unconscious from being discombobulated all over the ground. In fact, they maintain their focus and uses their severed arms to activate a secret machine that's in this room to do something. That's all we'll say for now. They do something with it. So this weird machine starts whirling up. You'll definitely kind of remember it if you read the original Zatch Bell series and recognize what it might be. But this machine starts whirling up. A big, bright, glittering light shines in this room, and our characters that we've been following, the discombobulated Ziggy, Zelly, the dog, and the baby, are all whisked away somewhere, teleported away, not visible in the room any longer. From there, we have our big scary demon ask a friend named Gil to light up the room using some light magic. The room is lit up and we see that the children are no longer in the room, but the demon is still trying to hunt them down and figure out what this weird device is that might have sent them away. To make a long story short, eventually the demon slash creature gets an understanding of what this room is for and says that our mission, after all, is to wipe all demons out of existence. And that's why there is a little kind of a bit of a question on whether or not this is a demon. I saw some people theorizing that this might be the opposite of a demon, as like an angel. And I do like stories where angels are depicted opposite kind of to the way that they're often depicted, right? Where you have demons who are kind of like, you know, happy-go-lucky looking for the most part, right? They look like chibi kind of people. And then you have angels who are going to be this horribly grotesque, mutating monsters, right? I really like that kind of dynamic and how it switches around in certain media. So if this is an angel instead of a demon, that would be one development. But again, because of stuff that I read in the Kanzenban extras or the special whatever chapter that I read where there was an interview with the mangaka, I do think that these might be dark demons, right? Or demons that are just born with kind of a different penchant for darkness, right? There are those cases according to the mangaka. So I wonder if maybe they fully differentiate themselves from being demons, or if this is just something like an angel, because there is kind of an interesting star symbology on the chest. There's a lot of dark clothes, but there's also a lot of maybe potentially white or light clothing going on with the character. So we're really going to see. And they're going around with another character who, you know, creates light. I could see how maybe these two characters could be angels. And if that's going to be the case, then obviously angels are going to be the main villains of this part, right? Because we already had a Momoto or a demon battle royale where the demons are all fighting each other. So obviously, if there's going to be a new threat, why not make it angels? So from there, our character Zelly wakes up on the beach with the dog and the baby all safe, and then looks around and finds the remains of Ziggy on the beach, sadly passed away, didn't survive the journey, and then gives them a proper burial by the river under a nice and beautiful tree. Remembering Ziggy's words, though, to look for the man in the photo, Zelly bandages her arms up, which are pretty badly broken, carries the baby around, walks around with the dog, and looks in this strange land that she's in that she doesn't know anything about for a man named Kiyomaru. Now, as the search begins, Zelly makes their way through a town, obviously where there are people, and starts showing the photo to various people saying, hey, do you know this person? And most of them are going like, I'm not sure, I've never seen this person before. One girl stops and gets a lot of focus where she says, Kiyomaru, in this country, that's not an Egyptian name, and that immediately tells us that this is in Egypt, right? So this character's been ported from the Momoto world to Egypt, which is very far from Japan, right? So there are very, very little odds that Kiyo would be anywhere near here, right? As far as we know. So as the chapter goes on, our character Zelly keeps asking multiple characters and multiple people, hey, have you seen this guy named Kiyomaru? Hey, have you seen this guy named Kiyomaru? And then some people start picking up on the fact that she's carrying around a strange looking baby, and they start calling the baby a monster and, you know, kicking Zelly out, and Zelly's walking through the streets crying and not really getting any help. And it's a really sad sight. It's a pretty much, I mean, because the people don't know that this is a demon, right? It's a kind of like a little girl walking around with a deformed baby and a dog, which looks kind of weirdly not like a dog, right? And everyone's just kind of being mean to them or saying, hey, I can't help you, get out of here, or get that disgusting little monster out of here. And eventually, a young boy overhears Zelly asking about Kiyomaru and says, hey, I know where Kiyomaru is. Yeah, I recognize this guy. I'm going to take you to him. And instead, this boy actually brings Zelly, the baby, and the dog to a group of people who are sadly actually responsible for doing human trafficking in the area. They sell people that they find on the streets to do manual labor, right? And that's awful. And it's just really, really bad luck that looking for someone named Kiyomaru ended up getting this person in this position, right? Ended up getting this character Zelly in this situation where now there's all these adults who are like, hey, we're gonna sell you, but we can't sell this little monstrous child. And then it ends up being this kind of really big situation that Zelly tries to run away from and ends up getting beat down by these adults. But as it seems like things are going too far and these adults are bullying this young Momoto, the monstrous Momoto from previously in the chapter appears before them, seemingly having figured out how to make its way through that large machine that was in the room, and towers over these adults and starts scaring the hell out of them with its brain exposed and its giant cyclops eye. And they try to hit it with their weapons like lead pipes and everything, and that obviously isn't working. So the demon just goes and sends people literally bouncing off walls and flying and falling into, like, you know, the surrounding areas. It's really hilarious that these guys are trying to bother this young Momoto, and now instantly it's this instant karma, right? They instantly just get rebuffed. But the instant karma ends, because obviously this character, this giant kind of muscular, big brain exposed demon, starts attacking our characters, right? Like the dog tries to defend Zelly, and the dog obviously gets knocked away. People start shooting the demon with bullets and stuff. That doesn't really do anything. They all bounce right off. And it seems like all hope is lost as people are just getting destroyed by this demon in the town center of this Egyptian town, right? Just in the center of the town, there's just this demon wailing on human beings and kind of just causing absolute chaos and mayhem where everyone is witnessing this and seeing this, right, and running away. But to keep the attack from going on any further, Zelly stands up after being kicked to the ground by this giant creature and throws a rock at its eye, and it hits the piece of armor right here, so it kind of misses the eye, but it's a valiant effort. Now this monster kicks Zelly and sends her flying, and then she tries to pick up a pipe. She tries to do various things to fight back, and it doesn't seem like Zelly has any ability to use spells, right? And that's probably because we're in the human world and there's really no presence of a book here to be found. So I don't know how Zelly would be able to take advantage of spells, right, in any way, shape, or form, but that's something that I guess we're gonna have to figure out as the series goes on. This is where we start getting to the really important stuff in this chapter. Zelly has this moment of like breaking down and realizing that there's nothing that she can do, right? And she says there's nobody here anymore. Ted, Cherish, Ryan, Ziggy, they're all gone. They're all dead, effectively. And we recognize Ted, Cherish, and Ryan from the original series. Ted is kind of like that, the kid with the blonde pompadour. Cherish was the one that had the ability to shoot crystals, and that might actually be where Ziggy got those crystal spells from previously. Ryan was the small one that could obviously transform into like a giant wolf and summon claws and stuff like that. And then Ziggy, who we met earlier in the chapter, they're all seemingly dead, according to this character Zelly. But the biggest news, the most shocking news, the craziest news that you could possibly receive, that I still don't believe is true, by the way, is that according to Zelly, the king himself, King Zatch, or Gash, right, I guess, King Zatch Bell is dead, according to this character. It seems like even the king is dead, is what she says. So I'm not sure I'm buying that. I'm not sure you kill Zatch in between, you know, the first series and this series. I definitely think you have to have Zatch come back, especially if you're involving characters like Kiyomaru and looking for Kiyomaru. But as Zelly is having this moment of desperation and saying, I came to this world, there's no Kiyomaru anywhere, I'm asking for help, no one wants to help me, all my friends are dead, so I guess the only person who can defend this baby is me. And then she stands up like she's gonna do something to the big demon, but obviously there's nothing she can really do. But thankfully, that loud screaming and that loud talking about Kiyomaru and all this stuff actually drew more attention to the town square. And where you have this villain saying, ah, you got some courage there, I like when people show a little backbone, you have a mysterious character in the background of the scene saying, indeed, and they look a little familiar. They look a little familiar to me. And from there, we have the giant demon trying to attack Zelly, but then getting interrupted by the girl that we saw earlier in the chapter, who was saying, no one named Kiyomaru would probably be here because that's not an Egyptian name. They're probably somebody from a land far away. You know, you're probably not going to be able to find that person. But actually, we see that girl coming back. And she told Zelly that she couldn't allow her to fend for herself in this situation where, you know, it's a child walking through town dealing with all the kind of dangers that comes of that, right? Because of that, this girl actually ends up helping Zelly, and one of the most interesting things that she says is, we need to run right now to give Kiyomaru time to hold off the monster. And then Zelly responds confused, like, what? Kiyomaru? And then looks to the side, and we see this kind of blurred figure just standing, posed, like T-posing pretty much, right? Like pose in front of the giant demon. And then we get three color pages actually, where we see a man, again, standing in front of the demon, posed up with the demon all crazy, giant, towering over them, ready to attack. And we see that it's actually Kiyomaru standing there in front of the demon, actually in Egypt. Now, if you call BS on Kiyomaru randomly being in Egypt, there is an explanation for why Kiyomaru would potentially be in Egypt. He does look a little older here. It is like a new kind of art style, so that might explain a little bit of it. But I do think Kiyomaru looks like a grown, tall man, right? Especially in the way that he's drawn with the color page of him and the demon. So some time has definitely gone by, right? Like some time has definitely gone by, and I think I have a proper explanation for why Kiyomaru would be in Egypt at this time if he's an adult, right? And we're gonna go back to some of those interviews and stuff and talk about it in a future video. But yeah, that is the first chapter of the Zatch Bell sequel series. So it seems like, again, it's gonna be a monthly series and we might get chapters every month. But with that said, to keep you guys entertained, if you're a Zatch Bell fix on this channel, we are gonna be doing this thing called Momoto Mondays, or I guess Demon Mondays, where we're gonna be talking about a different Zatch Bell character every week on Monday. So look forward to that. Look forward to more videos about the chapters every month when they come out. And I've definitely got some interesting things planned. Next up, we're going to talk about that interview and how it kind of relates to this chapter and how it kind of gave hints years ago, years before this was ever announced, to the stuff that we're seeing now, right? It explains why Kiyo was probably in Egypt. It explains something maybe about the demon or the angel that we saw. It explains a couple things, and it also kind of leaves us with some questions that I'm sure are going to be answered in the sequel series. So I'm going to talk about that interview, and I'm also going to talk about a special chapter that happened after the end of the original Zatch Bell series that makes me really think that there's no way that Zatch is dead. So we're going to talk about all those things coming up soon, but right now, that's all I have. So this is Pineapple. I'll see you guys later. Peace.